Alright, so I'm going to start modeling this fire hydrant here. And I'm going to turn my blue screen off. And looking at this, my actual first iteration of this is actually probably a bit wrong. I don't know what the other side of this looks like. Maybe there's another nozzle. But there's a big nozzle here. There's a smaller nozzle there. It looks like on this specific one. So you can play around with the design of it. It doesn't have to look exactly like it. Ideally, we're creating a representation of a fire hydrant. We're not doing this for print or doing this for something very specific. All right. One important thing to note on this is you can see how this is kind of blending into these things. That's why I pulled these things out instead of just like dropping in a shape. If I hit 3, you can see how we're kind of blending in there. It's actually too much blending, but it is there. Okay. But I have a basic shape, and you can see I started with, if I scroll down, I started with a cylinder. And I just did some extrusions, some deletings, and inserting edge loops and whatever else, shaping this to get this kind of shape. Okay. So I'm going to try to create this shape out of as many extrusions as I can on this, just because I think it'll kind of lend to that blended shape of this. So I'm going to go in here and just grab these edges. That edge, that edge. I'm going to scale them out a little bit because I think it probably needs a little bit bigger base. And I'm going to try to isolate some of these areas. So I'm going to just insert some edge loops. And I'm going to go with, okay, here's the base. Here's this part, so that's that part. And then here's this dividing line about there. Okay. Then I have some room until I get to this stuff. Then I have the cap area, which I have to develop, obviously. And then I have this little top part. Okay. So I'm just going to add another division maybe here. And maybe there for that. Okay. Then I'm going to go to my faces and grab these faces. And just pull this out. Okay, and I'm just scaling it out. That's too big. Like that. I didn't extrude it, I just literally scaled it out because I already put in the lines. And it'll give me a little bit of a taper, a little bit of a blending going from one spot to the other. I'm going to grab these points, pull them up a bit. There we go. I'm just hitting 3 so I can see the roundness of that. I think I like that. It's the cap area. Okay, I'm going to drop in some bevels here. So, like there. Like there. I know in these areas, I'm not totally done modeling them, but I know I can drop in a bevel at this point. Just to kind of seal the deal on some of these areas. So that when I go to hit 3 and smooth it out, then I'm not losing too much volume in there. I'm still getting the basic shape. I think here I can probably add a bevel. I may want to pull one out of here too. Let me extrude this. Okay, and if I wanted this one to be a little bit bigger, I can always grab these and just scale this up. And scale that up. Okay, so that one's a little bit bigger. It will kind of warp the surface, but I don't think we'll really see it. Alright, so I'm just going to grab these faces here and just put bevels on them. There we go. So you can see how now we have these rounded shapes and they're blending right into that. I'm going to put 2 divisions. I think 1's good. Okay, we don't get anything extra out of having 2 divisions there. Alright, so that's looking good so far. And I like to bounce around, you may have noticed. Let me go to this face, and this face. If I was going to animate these things coming off, I'd want to do this a little bit differently. But I'm just going to model them like right into it. So I'm going to extrude, go to my offset, oops, -0.005. Okay, that way it scales it back out. Extrude again, pull it out. Yeah, a little bit of a scaling here. Extrude again, pull it out a little bit, scale it down a little bit. I'll hit 3 just to see where we're at. I actually moved it too much. So let me go back to my extrude face 21 and just pull this in. There we go. So now it looks more like a cap and not just whatever that thing was I was originally creating. The only part I'm going to drop on here is this Pentagon shape. I'm going to just drop that in there because there's no way I can really model it out of this without adding a bunch of divisions. Alright, so that's good for now. Okay, you can see how I'm losing a little bit of shape here. It's actually like softening it too much. That's where bevels come in, because anytime I have an area, I just say, okay, I like where this is at, I just want to hold this. I just take those areas and I just add bevels. Well, might as well do it to all three of these at the same time. Go 2. Let's hit 3 so we can see what that's looking like. A shape like this, I definitely want to smooth it out. Not get anything by adding more divisions. Let's do it there. Okay. Alright, so that's where we're at so far. You can see with the shape of that. And these whole things may be just pulled out a bit too far. So I'm just going to grab this one and just push it in. You can see when I go to move it in that it's actually at some weird angle. I could just kind of eyeball it and no big deal, no one's really going to notice that minuscule amount of movement, okay? But there are move tools that we can play with. Just pull my tool settings off. If I change this to object, sometimes that will get me it, okay? In this case it's not. If I change it to local or normal, sometimes those will also get me different things. So I go to normal average, haha. You see now we're at the average of the direction of the faces, so now I can just push that in. And the cool thing about that is when I grab this one, it does the same thing. It fits perfectly, so I just push it in. I'll grab this guy and just push him in. Okay, so don't be afraid to go around and click inside here. Just make sure you set it back to world when you're done. There we go. Okay, that's good. I'm going to jump down here to this area. I'm going to throw in, I could add divisions or I could just throw in a bevel. Either way works. See, when I put a bevel here, the bevel is just going to add divisions. But then I can play with how many divisions I get. So something like that. And then I can play with the offset. So something like that. Now I'm just going to extrude this. And there's that shape right there. Cool. I'll probably add another little step here. I think I want to just grab. I'm going to put in a division here. Let me go to Insert Edge Loop. And it literally is, you know, what I feel like doing at the time. It's not any science to it. It's just kind of like, oh, I'll put in an edge loop this time, and next time I'll do a bevel, and the next time after that I'll extrude it, then put in a bevel or whatever. So I'm just going to scale this out. And you see how that gives me the little lip that's right there. I'll hit 3. Okay, we're looking a little bit like wobbly. It doesn't look like it goes straight up. And then has this little bump in it that actually looks like it's transitioning too much into it. So I'm going to go back to my edge and just insert a bevel here. There we go, that's looking good. Obviously this one's a little bit of a fatter thing. I could actually come down here to my original poly cylinder and change my radius. And you can see how that's going to change the entire scaling of the whole thing. But then I could just go into these areas that, you know, obviously are supposed to be rounded, like these caps. And then just nudge those guys down so they're back to being round. Okay, so now we have something that's a little bit more vertical. I'm going to make that bottom, the base a little bit thicker too. So I'm just scooting it up off the ground, grabbing the faces underneath. Oops. I'll just delete those faces underneath because I really don't need them. There we go. I'm going to put some bolts in the bottom. I'll put another edge loop in here. Put 2 right there, and I can just scale in these guys. And just push them down. And you can see how that just gives me this little dip right there. There we go. That's good. Alright, I can actually go to these things here. I'm going to grab all these faces. And I'm going to try to create this little pattern that they have there. It's obviously, here's a little bit taller, there's a little bit shorter, so I can always scale it or leave it or whatever. I'm using this as a reference. I'm not trying to recreate this one in here. Just using it as reference for areas where I could add detail. That's it. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to extrude it. So now I want to extrude each one of these faces individually. Can't do it this way. So I have to go into my options for the extrude and just say keep faces together off. And now you can see that each one of these faces has now been separated. Okay, so if I go to my thing and I scale it down, I hit 3, I can extrude again, just push it in. Back to object mode, click off. And now you see how I have those little dips in the bottom of that. And it's looking a little bit like bulbous. So I'm going to insert another edge loop right about there. And I'm just going to make sure it's scaled good there. Maybe I'll insert another edge loop. Come on. If I insert one up here, you can see where it's going to go right there. If I insert one here, it's going to go there. Okay, and that'll actually make these look a bit square, so I have to be careful with how I insert these. I think I want to insert one maybe up here, right there, and then the same thing here, right about there. There we go. So that looks kind of cool. Looks like that one. If I need to make it bigger, I'm going to go to my vertices, grab all the vertices, and just pull it up. I'm deselecting the middle row, pulling it up some more. There we go. So now I basically have that bigger shape like they have. So let's go back in here. I'm going to add some bevels to this thing. Oops. Bevel. And if this was like background stuff, I wouldn't add so much detail to it like I'm adding all these bevels, but because we're so close to this, I want to make sure it looks good. And if you're working on something like a video game, sometimes you'll actually create like iterations of resolutions of these things, because depending on where you're at in the video game, you might see the low res one or the high res one or whatever. Oops, I want to extrude that. There, I'm just going to insert an edge loop. Insert edge loop. Okay, and the reason I'm inserting an edge loop instead of doing another bevel is because I like where the points are positioned. I just want to hold the points where they're at. And that's what that edge loop's going to do. I think I'm being a little too saucery up here. So I'm going to go to my front view. Holy cow, what happened there? I must have accidentally selected part of that. So let's just go back to vertices, and grab the vertices, and just pull those back up. There we go. Sometimes we accidentally select things. As long as we get it back, we're good. Alright, so where were we at? Too saucery, right? I think it's these here just might be a little bit too high up. I'm just going to flatten those guys just so they stay in line with their neighboring ones. If you transition too quickly into this, then you're going to get that saucery look. There we go. That looks better. It looks like it's flat up here. Okay, and then I'm just going to grab this face, shift click that one, shift greater than, until I grab that whole ring. One more. Actually, I'll keep it there. And then I'm going to scale it out, just so I get a little bit more room to add those bolts in there. Okay, then I'm going to grab these, and I just think this is maybe a little bit too rounded on top. I'm just moving those faces down. Okay, now I'm just going to grab this face and just extrude it a couple times to add a little bit more detail up here. Come on, scale. There we go, let's take a look. Still a little bit saucery. Extrude this one again, pull it up. Oops. Just go to the move tool and pull it up. There we go. Okay, so it's done. I'm just going to add the bolts to it, and then the chain, and I think we'll be good. I could add these little lines too, same way I did the other one. This one's going to be a little bit trickier because I have all of these here, and just so you can see what's going to happen, I'm going to say, okay, let's do the extrude, keep faces together off, and you can see how it breaks each one of these blocks into a separate piece. Okay, so that's not what we want to do, but what I can do is let it do that. We'll just try and see if this is going to work. That's too small. 0.005, maybe that'll be good. I essentially want to connect these guys here. No, there's an easier way to do it, okay? Which is just kind of extrude every other one first. Like this, extrude. Type in my offset, 0.001. There we go. And then I'm going to go back to every other one again, but now I'm grabbing the ones I didn't grab before. Extrude, type in 0.001. And now if I go back and I grab each one, everyone's already separated, so I don't have to worry about keeping faces together. Okay, because they'll already be together. So now I can just go and scale it, hit 3, move it in. Okay, it doesn't really look right because I actually messed it up a little bit. But that would be the process for it. I'm just going to undo all that. Okay. I would actually probably want to do every other one. Have a little bit more gap between them. Like here I had a nice gap between them already. There I don't. So I'm just going to leave it like that. Maybe I'll put in just a loop or something. Insert edge loop. Like that. Make sure this stays rounded. See how it kind of got a little bit weird looking. So this guy here, I'm going to put in a bevel. Grab the face that came in. And just give him a little bit of an extrusion. Alright, so it adds a little bit of shape to the top of that. So he has a little hat on. Alright, so now for the bolts. Create Polygon Cylinder. Basically, I already did this on the light pole. Let me move it over here so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to the move tool, holding down V and middle clicking to drag it in. I'm going to set this to, I think the bottom ones are probably 6 divisions. I'm just placing it here for now. I'm going to move it into the correct spot in a second. this is kind of rounded. You can kind of see it from the side where it's like rounding off. I don't want that. I'm going to go back to here, and I'm just going to flatten these points out. So I'm just scaling them together so that they don't have any difference. And then I'll go to the front view. Just make sure these are all in line, or pretty much in line. There we go. So it's nice and smooth now. All right, so there's my bolt. 6 divisions. Shouldn't really need one on the cap. I'll go to faces. Actually, let me put one on the cap. I will want one. I won't. What am I thinking of? Go to faces and delete the bottom face because we don't need that one. Scale it down until we're at a good bolt size, maybe like that. Okay, and then just put a bevel on it. Let's go 2 divisions, 0.1. There we go. So that's good. So then we go to the top view so I can line it up, get in position. And just like before, I like to line it up with one of these edges. So if I hold down V and I snap it, kind of move it into position. Okay. Then I'm going to hold down D, hold down V, and just grab this red. So I want to snap the pivot to the center of this. So I'm just moving the pivot over here. So now I can duplicate, and I can rotate this. And again, I want to figure out what that number is going to be. It could be 10, because that goes into 360 evenly. It could be 15, because that goes into 360 evenly. It could be 30, it could be 60, it could be 20. 40 goes into 360 evenly. 80 does not go into 360 evenly. Okay, so I couldn't do 80. And I'll show you what will happen if we try to do something like 80. See how I have here, and then the next one is going to want to go there. Okay, so I end up with this kind of offset thing, and it doesn't really match correctly. So duplicate, scoot this over. I'm going to go about 20, maybe 30. There we go, 30 looks good. Shift D all the way around. There we go. Now we have bolts on this thing. Hit 3 to smooth it out. Okay, I'm going to grab all these bolts. I'm just going to scale them in towards the center and lift them up a little bit. Oops. Make sure I don't grab stuff. Okay, that. There we go. It's good. So now it looks like we have bolts on here. Let's go and create. I'll just actually duplicate this guy. I'm going to center pivot him, and then we're going to snap him all the way up here. I'm going to go to the top view so I can see this. I'm going to hold down V, snap. There we go. Now he's lined up. And then we'll scale it so that it looks correct. Now I don't want to scale it too much this way because I may get a little bit too much rounding. Actually, I'm probably not going to get too much rounding in this case, but sometimes you will. Just be careful with it. Alright, so there's that. And it looks like there's actually like a bolt underneath too. So I'm just going to scale this up, scale it down. Something along those lines like that. There we go. Okay, now for these caps, these are actually like 5-pin. I don't know why they're 5-pin. Yep. So again, I'll just create a cylinder. Hold down V, snap it over here with the middle mouse. Scale it down. Obviously, I'm going to need to rotate it. Okay, we'll take this and we'll make the caps 0, the divisions 5, and we'll delete the bottom face. There we go. And then we'll go and add a bevel to this. 0.1 with 2 divisions should be good. Alright, it's a little bit bigger piece, so the bevel's going to be a little bit bigger. Then I can just go to the top view, and you can see it's not lined up good. So I'm just going to go snap it in this direction. Oops. Hold on V, not X. There we go. Pull it out a little bit. It looks like it might be tapered too, so let me just grab this and just scale it down slightly. No, it's got to be the angle. Why would that be tapered? Doesn't make sense. Slip right off. Alright, so now I'm going to take DV again, scoot it, the pivot here, and now I can rotate this into position. And I can see it's pretty close to 22.5. So I'll leave it at 22.5, which is half of 45. So that's where I wanted to end up at. So I'm going to duplicate this again, and then do 22.5 plus 90. So if you want to figure that out, you can. It ends up being 112.5. So you didn't even have to do the math, just kind of eyeballed it and knew roughly where it was going to be. And this is going to be 22.5 plus 180, which should be 202.5. There we go. And of course, these are not in position correctly, so we'll just move them up. And then I can center pivot it, go to my rotate, and I can just kind of twist these a little bit. I have to rotate it or move them up a little bit more. And possibly scale them down a touch. There we go, not much. I think I want to just define this guy a little bit better. Let's go back to our move tool options, set this to normal average. There we go. I think this guy could probably use a little bit more tweaking as well. It looks like he's like tucked. There we go, that looks better. Okay. Now there is like a little clip here that these things are looped to. So I have to be careful when I add something like that, because if I try to go in here and just say, okay, let me grab these faces here and just do an extrude on it, well now my round shape is now not a round shape anymore. Okay, so if I scale it, I kind of lose a little bit of the round shape. Okay, and because this is on a funky angle, I can't really scale it very good. I can go to the move tool and try to move it. Can I reset that? No. Yeah, I'm not really getting a good angle with this. Set to edge. This edge. Well, still doesn't want to go into a good rotation. So, set the tool. I'm going to undo that. And I think for that piece, maybe I'll just add a little piece in there. I'm going to create a cube, snap it under here. Negative 22.5 seems to be the key number for this guy. I'll go to the top view, just make sure that that's where I want that to be. It's a little bit off, but maybe just be my camera angle. Okay. So now let me delete this face here, that face there. Good. So now I can grab this edge, throw in a bevel. It looks like this part might be like pulled down a little bit. Okay, now we've mentioned before, never ever use bevel or booleans. Never use booleans. We always use bevel. This is actually one of those cases where I would use booleans because I have a specific shape that calls for something boolean. Okay. So I'm going to create a cylinder. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees this way. And I'm going to rotate it negative 22.5 that way. I'm going to move it into position. Okay, so something like this. So I'm going to have a little bit bigger. Click the object I want to keep. I want to keep this. I'm going to shift click the object I want to subtract, which is that. I'm going to delete the history on both of these. And I'm going to go to Mesh Booleans Difference. And it cuts it right out. Okay? So that's where Booleans comes in handy, is these kinds of shapes. Now here's where it doesn't come in handy. Let's say I wanted this to be nice and smooth. If I grab this edge, see I can't even really grab the edge without grabbing all the edges individually. So just deselect all the stuff that I don't want. Alright, so now I just have the circle, and I go drop a bevel on here. You can see that I get the bevel. In this case it works, sometimes it won't work. But then I also have this weird line that's kind of like cutting through my shape. Okay, and I can't, if I can try this too. This might be just like in the best case scenario where about Boolean seems to be working. 2014 is bringing in a new, not 2014, but 2014, the extension. It's going to bring in a brand new beveling tool that's been improved. So, or Booleans tool which has been improved. So in this case, the Booleans is actually working very good. Typically it doesn't. Okay, so that's why you have to be very careful with where you use it. If I hit 3 on here, it's definitely not going to work. You can see that is not going to work. Alright, so there I have that little loop where I can put my chain through. And with my Booleans, if I go to my outliner, so I'm going to organize my stuff still from the new stuff I've created. Here's my poly cube that I used to create this. Here's my poly cylinder I used to create this. And then here's this poly surface 1, which is the result. If I go to that cylinder, and I go to, let's say, front view, come on. Maybe the right view I can see it better. Nope. Pretty much both views I'm kind of not at a good angle, but whatever. I can move this. And I can't move it. Okay, sometimes it'll physically let you move it, and then you can adjust it and play with it. Okay, in this case it's not going to let me, so whatever. So I'm going to delete the history on this, which should get rid of those two guys, which it did. And then if I do need to adjust it, I can always grab these points and move them carefully. Average. Let's see if I have a good set to point. I don't have anything in here that's going to really set it correctly. Okay. The only way I could possibly move this is if I rotated this. Oops. Let me center pivot it first. Move it to 22.5 or rotate it to 22.5. That way it's basically square again. And then I can adjust where this is positioned. It's like it being back maybe a little bit more. Not so close to the edge. Okay, then reset that. And we're back to a good spot. Okay, so in that case, Boolean seems to have worked out for us. Sometimes, like I said, it won't. And you will just spend more time dealing with something like that than trying to get the Booleans to work than it would take you just to model it the correct way. So I could have modeled this, you know, in another instance, but it would have taken me a lot longer than I wanted to spend. All right, so let me go and grab these guys too. I'm going to duplicate these, pull them up for this. There we go. So I got some stuff there. I'm going to duplicate them, bring them underneath. I'm going to negative scale them. See how it flips them upside down. So now they're, if I didn't do that, there'd be a hole in the bottom, or we would have a hole. I'll flip them upside down and then move them into position. There you go. I don't think we really need to add anything further to that. I think that's probably good enough for that kind of detail. For these chains, I can basically do the same thing I did before. Create a torus, snap it over here. Come on, there you go. Point 1. 107, I think that's probably a good number. Alright, and the key to this is not having a million divisions. Okay, we're going to hit 3 to smooth it out, so we don't need a bunch of divisions. Alright, so in this case I'm going to go with 12. I like to keep it even. It looks like there's probably like a little dip before this thing here. There's probably like a little cap. So I'm just going to go into edge loops. Grab these faces. Extrude. Bring it in a tiny bit. There we go. Extrude again. Push it in. I think this probably needs to be just adjusted as far as where that's positioned. It looks a little bit too thin on the end. I'll go maybe the top view will give me a better selection area. No, I got it. Okay, good. Move tool options. Normal average, I think, was the one we used. Yes. Pull it back. Scale it up a bit. Hit 3, see where we're at. That's good. Maybe a bevel on this face. There we go. So now we have a spot for that ring to go. Now you have 22.5 for that guy. I'm going to hit 3 to smooth this out so we can see it. Okay, that's good. Oops. And I'm going to turn this back to turn on object this time. Try to grab all the points. So I'm just shaping this into that kind of pin shape. Doesn't have to be terribly, you know, a long drawn out modeling process. Just fitting it in there. And I'm not scaling these together because if I scaled these points together, it would actually thin it out. If I went like this and scaled them, you can see how they're getting like really thin. So I don't want to do that. I can scale them this way just to kind of flatten them out. There we go. So I think that's probably good there. Maybe a little bit of rotation here, adjustment. There we go. Okay. And then this is actually like a twisty type of chain, but you can go with a regular chain. Another torus. You want 0.07 for the section radius. Eight divisions each way. And these parts here might be a little bit too far down. There we go, that's good. Maybe a little bit bigger, 0.1. It looks like it might be a little bit even thicker. Alright. Let me just rotate this around to 90, and then we'll create that link. Alright, so I'm just going to pull this up, pull these up, and then that guy's going to go in the middle. Now if I want to do the twisty ones, not a big deal. The stuff I showed you before, I can go to nonlinear twist. Make sure the handle is rotated the correct way. I don't know why it came in that way. And then go to start angle and just twist it. Okay, now you can see the kind of shape this is giving us. If I hit 3 even, it's going to be too thin maybe. So I may need to undo my tweaks to this. Right there, and then maybe start off with something that has a bit more in the, not the height, the axis. So maybe I have 12 going that way, and we'll put 12 going this way too, just to make sure it's even. Okay. Then I can grab these, pull it up, grab this, pull it up, grab these ones, pull it up a little bit. There we go. Now we have that. Go back to our twist. Reset the rotate. And now we have the twisty ones in here. And then maybe we just take it and grab the points afterwards. Let me duplicate it. And just bring these points maybe a little bit closer together so they're not terribly far apart. Okay, so we're getting that figure 8 thing. And it doesn't look like from this area here that's even as twisted as I was making it. So it's like that. Okay, so I can use that, duplicate it, and use that. Delete this setup. Delete this. I had the other one deleted already. Okay. So I'll scale it down, reposition it, and this is not going to be, you know, the world's easiest thing to position these, but I think if you have your views up correctly, you can make it kind of easy for yourself. There we go. Okay, so I'm not going to let you watch this entire process, but essentially this is going to be like a boring thing that's just monotonous. Now I am using this outside yellow one because the outside yellow one will actually rotate it in line with my camera. I think I want this to go that way. Okay, and maybe even having a let's see, this view here gives me 3 views. Thinking I can just go to panels and change this to my perspective camera, go to panels, change this to my front camera, go to panels and change this to my side camera. Okay, so now I can kind of keep an eye on this in this view just to make sure it's going in the right direction. Okay, we're just going to loop back, go here. And all the stuff I did to this guy, I'm going to do to this one and do to that one just to make sure I get it, you know, in the correct position. Okay, so that's it. I'm gonna make you watch, like I said, to finish the rest of that. All right. What else? These little lights here. Let's define the lights a little bit better. If we look at a picture of some street lamps, like we talked about, there's different kinds of street lamps in here. I'm going to go with something that I'll show how to make these ones. These squarish kind of ones. Yeah, they start off with a cube. Surprise. Oops. And again, we just rough in the shape. And then we go from there. So let me add some divisions in here, insert edge loop, like that. I'm going to scale that out. So that way it's kind of tapered and then it comes back up. These things I'm just going to do really quick. This isn't going to be as long as the fire hydrant is. Keep faces together needs to be off. There we go. 0.5. Extrude this again, push it in a little bit. Let me see if I can get a closer image. Let me go up to my search tools, size, large. There you go, something like that. That's just a drawing. There you go. This works too, like something like this. I wouldn't start off with a cube. In this case, I would start off with a cylinder and create that kind of shape. And then the rest of it's going to be extrusions. Just extruding and adding divisions to this. I can add a couple divisions here just to give myself maybe a little notch. Tiny offset. Oops, make it bigger. There we go. Extrude again. Push it in. I'm going to extrude this guy. So it's kind of a light like that. And one thing I want to do to this light, if I'm going to use it as an actual light, if it's like this, no problem. I'm just going to leave these planes in there like that. But if I want to see through it at all, like in this guy, I can kind of see through that light. In this one, I can kind of see through that. In this one, I can definitely see through it. Okay, so if I want to see through this, I actually want to model the inside of this. So I'm going to grab these guys here and go to Mesh, Extract. And that pulls them off of that. So now that they're separate pieces. Okay. So then I can say, okay, well now I have that. Let me delete this stuff here. I have to go inside here and model what this is going to look like. So we'll set that there. I'll even do like a little extrusion here. Right for that. Okay. What the inside is going to look like, and if it's going to be a light bulb or whatever, I need to model that. So I can start off with a cube and pull the cube over here. top view. Hit the wrong button, that's why it wasn't working. There we go, snap that. And I've modeled a light bulb before, so I'm not going to show how to model a light bulb again. But essentially you start off with a cube and you just extrude and add divisions to get that cube shape, or to get that light bulb shape. Okay, so you'd model that, model any mechanics that you think would be necessary for that kind of thing. Oh, that's huge. Okay, I'm just going to group all this junk up here, center pivot it, scale it down. Looks like it's way too big. There we go. That's a little bit more appropriate. Okay. And then I can organize this so that it's nice and neat. So here is that group that I have here. Here's that. Here's this. Okay, all these pieces are kind of part of this lamp. So I'm going to group all that stuff together. I'm going to put my pivot in that bottom corner. Call it a street lamp. And let me go through this stuff and just organize this real quick. And I want you to see this because I want you to make sure you're keeping organized. Okay, here's all the stuff that would go into my fire hydrant. Okay, I think I grabbed everything. I'm going to group it. I'm going to call it fire hydrant. You don't need to go through and name each individual thing. Okay. Typically, when you do grouping on a solid object like this, you group it based on textures. Okay. The texture of this is basically going to be the same exact thing, except for these guys would be different. Okay. These ones here would be a different texture. They would be like stainless steel or something. Okay. So I would take those and group those separately and call those links. That way I would know they're called links. If I have a different setup on these things, then I want to make sure I go through and grab all of those. P-cylinder right there, and then here's some more P-cylinders right there. Oops, maybe not these guys. Let's say these guys are going to be a separate thing, that they'll be textured the same as the fire hydrant. Put these bolts. Okay, so now I kind of have the fire hydrant. Here's all the other stuff that's inside there. That'll all be like the red part of it. I can group that. There. That's the main part. Here's the bolts. Here's the links. There's the fire hydrant right there. Pivots. Always put your pivot in here. Move the center pivot and then just snap it to a spot that you like. I like the bottom. Okay, right there in the bottom. And again, just like our trash cans, if we need more of these, I can just duplicate them, hold down Control, grab the green, and just slide it over to where I might need another fire hydrant. I don't think I would need two that close, but you get the idea. Okay. So, continue modeling on this. The building could probably use a little bit more modeling in here. Really look at some of the reference for what buildings have on them that make them look neat. Okay, some buildings are just kind of flat, but then there's other ones that have these kind of fancy bits outside. These fancy bits we modeled separately than the rest of the building. Here's some fancy bits. Fancy bits are great. Here's boring. It's okay. Here's really, really fancy bits. Okay, you don't need to go that crazy. But you can really kind of explore and play around with some of these tools by doing that kind of thing. All right, but it's really going to depend too on what kind of building you're doing. Awning, same kind of thing. Doorway, same kind of thing. Window, same kind of thing. A lot of this is going to be textured. And that's the next part we're going to get into. That's enough of the modeling portion of this. The next part we're going to do is just start texturing this stuff. Okay? So continue modeling. Like I said, in a week you should have most of the modeling done. And that's it.